What do you do when you see an airplane flying directly toward you? You can't possibly imagine what happened next. The worst aviation disaster in history. Hello, friends. This is the story of the world's deadliest aviation accident, the Tenerife Airport Disaster. It all began on a foggy runway where a Boeing 747 was ready to take off. The pilot pushed the thrust levers forward, turned on the headlights, and the plane crossed the takeoff speed, the point of no return. But just then, out of the thick fog, the shadow of another Boeing 747 appeared. Coming from the opposite direction, only a few meters away. The pilots slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. Their only chance to avoid a collision was to take off. They pulled back on the stick, but the nose of the plane didn't lift. They were already too fast to take off. The plane went straight ahead and crashed into the other Boeing 747. It's hard to overstate how much the crash of these two planes changed the world. Before we start, please like the video so that we can make history great again. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. It all began on a normal working day in 1977. The Madrid airport received a phone call. There had been a bomb threat. To be on the safe side, the airport was evacuated. A little later, a loud explosion tore through the building. When emergency services arrived at the scene, they discovered that the roof of the airport had collapsed. Meanwhile, two Boeing 747s were in the air. They were supposed to land at the same airport. Planes were redirected to a smaller airport called Tenerife North Airport. It was a small, quiet airport surrounded by mountains. The airport had one narrow runway and one taxiway. When the planes arrived, they noticed that the airport was shrouded in fog. Airport's manager came up with a crazy idea. He figured the fog would disperse soon, so he let the planes wait on the runway until visibility improved. 1 hour passed, then another. The pilots of both planes got anxious. They wanted to take off and get to their destinations as soon as possible. At some point, the pilots of KLM Flight 4805 decided not to wait anymore. They asked for permission to refuel. After refueling, they needed to move to the other end of the runway to line up with the center line for takeoff. But once they moved, they completely blocked the only taxiway. The airport's manager realized his mistake. He should have sent the planes to different runways. Now the planes were stuck, and the only way to get them out was to let one of them take off. He gave the okay to KLM's captain. "You are cleared for takeoff," he said. "Roger. Cleared for takeoff," replied the captain of KLM. But the captain of Pan Am Flight 1736 hadn't heard the exchange. He was listening to the radio and didn't hear the control tower talking to KLM. At that very moment, the captain of KLM assumed that the control tower had given him the okay to take off. His first officer was busy checking the instruments and didn't correct him. The flight engineer drew the captain's attention to the fact that Pan Am was still on the runway, but the captain waved him off. "Don't worry about it," he said. "They'll move away at the last second." But Pan Am never moved. At first, the captain of Pan Am saw KLM's lights in the distance, but because of the fog, he didn't think much of it. He just kept taxiing toward the end of the runway. But then the lights seemed to come closer. At first, the captain thought KLM had accelerated to take off. But then he realized with horror that the other plane was actually flying straight toward him. "I've got company," he shouted to the co-pilot. "Canceled takeoff," he said into the microphone. The captain tried to turn the plane, but it was too late. KLM's right engine hit the upper left corner of Pan Am's cabin. The Boeing 747 split in half and burst into flames. The disaster claimed the lives of 248 people aboard KLM Flight 4805. On Pan Am Flight 1736, only 61 people out of 396 survived. The main reason for the crash was KLM's decision to take off before making sure the runway was free. The captain of KLM simply assumed that Pan Am would move away, but the Pan Am captain didn't hear KLM's clearance to take off. If the Pan Am crew had taken off 30 seconds earlier, the collision would have been avoided. That's why the investigators classified the crash as an accident. The survivors suffered terrible injuries and severe psychological trauma. Many couldn't work anymore and had to retrain for new jobs. The crash also led to major changes in aviation. For example, the use of radar systems became mandatory at airports. Before that, only bigger airports had them. Also, all runways and taxiways had to be marked clearly. This accident showed the world that even the smallest airport could become a scene of the biggest disaster. The Tenerife Airport Disaster remains the deadliest in the history of aviation. Friends, what do you think? How could such a terrible disaster be avoided? Be sure to share your thoughts below. That's all for today. See you next time.